Well, hey there. This is Beth Hovis, your sweet urban living lady. And this episode of our podcast, I'm really excited to welcome a very special guest, someone that I have known for a few years, who's helped me personally in my life, who has helped to bring me along in my healing journey. And I'm really glad that Nitza Moshe is here with me today. Now, this episode, along with our others, is part of what we call the healer's journey. And I named it that, knowing that we ourselves are not the ones who heal. It is God who created our bodies in such a way that our bodies will heal when we supply the right things, when we are in harmony and frequency with Him, aligned with Him. And so He is good and great. But there are people here on earth who take what God has given us and help others. They go through a journey themselves and then they turn around and say they want to help others. And Nitza, you are one such person. Someone who's been on a journey, someone who's turned around and said, let me take and use what I've been through and what I've learned to help others. So welcome to the Sweet Urban Living Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me here. Yes, I love the sweet urban lady, urban living lady. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yes, ma'am.
So let me introduce you properly, just give a little bit of background. Nitza is the founder of Remnant Remedy International. Her passion is to awaken and inspire the bride to understand that she is the living stone's tabernacle, indwelt by the light of Elohim. Nitza specializes in relating Yeshua, or Jesus, as Elohim Aleph-Tav, as the creative life force. She bases her health practice on Genesis 1:1-3, where electromagnetism, sound, and light brought order and health to a chaotic world. Nitza focuses on the Aleph-Tav Body System. That's the name of the system that she uses for bioenergetic wellness evaluations, health coaching, and you also use Quantum Aroma Response Therapy, weaving together faith, light, and wellness to help others experience coherent life and health. Now, Nitza, that was a mouthful. What does all that mean? So first, I'm like, how do we start? Should you share a little bit about that first, or do you want to dive in and tell the beginning of how you got started, your journey, which makes more sense?
Yeah. Well, I guess since you're there and it's a mouthful and mounds of information
It's a lot
up underneath that, but what really excites me is Genesis 1:1-3.
Yeah.
And I've been studying it for at least 30 years and there's always another download. So I guess in that whole thing, and especially when you're a believer and you're in the energetic world, right? Mm-hmm. You're always combating and trying to appeal to the common sense and the common mind, which a lot of it, because critical thinking has been taken away and definitions have been taken away that we don't even think, right?
Changed. We want
change
something
or don't even think, right?
Yeah. One thing meant one thing, now it means another. Go ahead.
And the enemy has taken things that Father has created. And so our association with it is just whatever. And then if we walked in that and we sinned in that, then that is a trauma trigger, right? Mm-hmm. So I like to always go back to definitions especially from the Hebrew, from the pictograph, and the whole thing in Genesis 1-3 in particular is there was electromagnetism in verse 1, there was sound in verse 2, and there was light, which is also order in verse 3. Mm-hmm. And when Yeshua, Jesus, says, I am the light, they knew that Genesis 1:1. When he said, I'm the Aleph and Tav, which we think he said Alpha Omega in Greek, but I don't think he did. They knew Genesis 1:1, where even though it's not translated, Elohim Aleph-Tav created the heavens and the earth. Mm-hmm. So we'll just leave it at that, but there's mounds of information.
Yeah, it's like I'm sitting here going, so just to clarify what you're saying, not to get stuck here, but just to clarify what you're saying. when we read the Bible and we read in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, we don't see the Aleph-Tav, the letter Aleph and the
Correct.
Tav, letter Tav that is in Hebrew, that is there in Hebrew.
Right.
We don't see it. They don't translate it, but it is there. And
Correct.
that's kind of what you're talking about. And there's a
Yes.
reason it's not translated, but we're not going to get into all
Right.
of that,
Right.
although it's fascinating.
Well,
So
and there's lots of definitions just within those three that when we read them, they mean something different, you know, like order and chaos. And that when we come into Genesis 1, we're looking at chaos and disorder, which means there was no life, there was disease, right? So
mhm.
when Yahweh Elohim Tav created or put these things into action, he was getting rid of that incoherency, bringing it to coherency and bringing it to order in life. And he created that. And that is where we find ourselves today, that the enemy is very busy at making our life and our world incoherent and attacking us with those three same things: magnetism, sound, and light. So I just want to take that full circle back to, and of course, when we have restoration, we're going to have that. So
Absolutely. And that's what we want right now, that we believe as believers and followers of Yeshua, Jesus. I mean, we say Yeshua because that's the Hebrew name, but
right.
it's translated Jesus. We believe in Jesus. We believe that he is the Son of God and that he is the way, the truth, and the life. But it's so fascinating. I'm just sharing this that for anyone who's listening that is not familiar with it, that they're not getting lost, and we're not
Yeah.
speaking another gospel or talking about another God or anything like that. Just kind of trying to make it, like you said, that we want to think critically and understand what the roots of where you drew from biblically to bring this into your practice. It's not as maybe strange as it sounds,
Right.
especially when you get into the Hebrew. So, and that is one of the things when we talk about the Aleph-Tav Body System, the name of the system that you use in your practice. It's based on the frequencies of the Hebrew letters and bringing, just like God did, bringing order or light,
Mm-hmm.
just to bring order to what was chaotic and to bring coherency so that we can function. I mean, that's what, so we can, so
Right.
that's what I'm like, yeah, we want this one day down the road, but we can have it now too, because what Jesus did on the cross. So
Right. And maybe we should just up front let people know, what is the Aleph-Tav Body System? It is
yeah.
a telecommunications system of the body with energy that has to do with the mind, the emotions, and the physical body. And Dr. Alfonso Manzo III, actually, has been researching and doing for decades now, and has a book called The Aleph-Tav Body System.
Yeah.
So that's one place to start, is to get the book and maybe pick up Michael Rood's shows or something, because a
Mhm.
lot of people misunderstand what it is we're doing, but other people instantly get it because it's what they've been waiting for.
Yeah.
And I've taken all my work for the last 30 something years, and I've just, I was very fortunate that I was on a similar path, especially with the ancient Hebrew and the studies and everything. But I was able to look at it and then tweak what he has done, because it has become the standard of measurement. And like, for instance, when we get into chakras of essential oils or emotions of essential oils, that's in the secular and the Christian community. If you went and asked somebody, where's your standard of measurement
Mm-hmm.
to decide these things, which oil is good for what? Well, when I come across anyone, they really don't know, or they outright tell me there is no standard of measurement. And within the Aleph-Tav Body System, I feel great and confident that everything has been measured
Mm-hmm.
and tested.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to remember that Hebrew letters are also numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the gist of that. So everything is measured and tested, and it's a tweaking of taking everything I've learned and go, oh, okay, where's my template? And every time I go to test it to look at something, it's right back. Oh yeah, if I adjust this, right, just like if you're doing your vocabulary in the New Testament, if you adjust your words in the New Testament to what was that word in the Old Testament, right? What was the foundation of that? So for those who are like, what is the Aleph-Tav Body System? Or we call it the ATB system, right?
Yeah.
That's really what we're talking about.
Yeah. So when you say measure, because, when I met you, and it was through, and I want to give a shout out to Bonnie, because
Bonnie, yes,
our good
amen.
friend Bonnie introduced us. And my first encounter with you in the healing area, natural health area, was aromatherapy. That is your area of expertise, or your foundational area of expertise is aromatherapy.
Well, it was
You
actually
are
in herbs.
herbs first.
I was in
Right?
herbs first, but then I moved on. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then you moved to aromatherapy. You are actually an artisan aromatherapist as well. So you source and create aromatherapy oils and singles and blends. And you've taken that a step further into the Aleph-Tav Body System. But before we go into that, what is it you're measuring per se? Are you measuring frequency? Are you measuring chemical compounds? Is it all?
Well, when I do a quantum aromatherapy or a quantum aroma response therapy test, I'm actually looking at several different things. I'm looking at what some may call the doctrine of signature, which I call the Aleph-Tav, which is the form, function, design, and purpose of the energy behind a plant or that part of the plant. For instance, if you resonate a lot towards essential oils that are made from leaves, then you are probably what we would call cycle 2. You're in the respiratory, lungs, the large intestine, and grief.
Okay.
And
So
so,
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
right. And that's what that part of the plant does for the human. And all throughout scripture, we're compared to a tree and a plant, basically, right? So that's one component. I also look at the having done, biblical Jewish studies and aromatherapy. I look at, does the person pick Torah oils, biblical oils? Because those all have their own symbolism and use in scripture. And usually if a person picks a lot or several of the biblical oils, right away, they're basically a believer and they're spiritually minded.
So now I have, for those who may be curious about Doctrine of Signatures, I do have a video where I've done like an introduction to Doctrine of Signatures on YouTube. So we'll put a link to that so that
Awesome. I'd love
anybody
to
who
see
wants
that.
to do that. It's just an introduction, and I started that. I need to do more on that. But the next part about those who choose like the essential oils that we typically see oils named in the Bible. And that may be something that we could put a link to if you have information about that, if someone's curious about that. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, I do provide it with the test when they come out because I created these prayers from an aroma prayer spa I did years ago. And so I've revived those prayers that I created. For instance, frankincense is purity.
Right.
And in the Torah portion of Naso, where there's a suspicion of adultery, which is actually an energetic thing they did, but we won't go into that. I actually have long article
I think
on
I
that.
read that article, and it was one of the most fascinating and I think accurate articles I have ever read. So,
and I didn't really know anything then.
Oh.
That was like 10 years ago. I really need to go back and readdress it, knowing what I know now.
Yeah.
But if you look through the sacrifices, frankincense, which is a symbol and its character, really good frankincense is very white.
Yeah.
Right. And we used to probably see in the yellowish one, but
Yeah.
really the high dollar stuff stays with the kings of the country from which they come.
Wow.
Okay. So, but it means purity. It's
Yeah.
one of the things. And actually in its Hebrew word, olibanum, which is where we get the word Laban, right? For Jacob, right? He was working for
Jacob's
Laban.
father-in-law. Yeah.
Laban is white, right? Well, anyway, if you had a sacrifice or some kind of offering that had to do with sin or suspicion of sin, you wouldn't use frankincense. And that's kind of where that comes from. And very fascinating, one of the cycles that frankincense is in a frequency range for is what we call the sixth cycle, which is where you're dealing with your emotion, your emotions, your whole body, but you're dealing with relationship, whether it's between, horizontal between you and me or vertical with the Father.
And I
So it's a
love
very spiritual
frankincense.
thing.
I love frankincense. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
it's one of my favorites.
So
So
yeah,
with that say, you're saying it helps with the relationships here, you and
it's very
me.
good for inflammation on the brain.
Yeah, yeah. Person to person, God, and person to God. And
Right.
it is, in fact, that's so funny that you said that, because getting older, joint issues, my chiropractor was even saying, you need to go use frankincense on that joint. Go use frankincense on that joint. So good for inflammation. And I'm like, I know these things. Why does somebody else have to tell me? But it's always good to
Well,
get
I
that
will
reminder.
challenge you on something there. I think it's a
Okay.
myth. Frankincense essential oil does not have boswellic acid in it,
Okay.
because when it's distilled, it changes the
Right.
composition. So a lot of times I see frankincense essential oil advertised for inflammation, muscle pain kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
not for the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And people buy it, right? But if you really want that property, you're going to want an infusion of it when you press it and macerate it
Mm-hmm.
and let it sit for at least 49 days, etc. And that's kind of a myth. The other myth that I like to dispel, which, I did this for years, not catching it, right?
Yeah.
There are no essential oils in the Bible,
Correct.
right? Because there
Correct.
wasn't a distiller. And so that goes back to your definition. They were
Right.
infusions, right?
Yes.
Nonetheless, you still wouldn't want to make an infusion of cinnamon and cashew and put it on somebody. It would
Right.
burn,
Too
right?
hot. Too hot. Too hot.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. But frankincense is good for lymphatic. I mean, it's amazing too. And then we get into the whole component of, people say, well, it's just a placebo. Well, think about that. Go through the logic of placebo. What we think is electromagnetic energy. So
Mm-hmm.
when we read the scriptures, when we pray the scriptures, or we're thinking, we are actually doing therapy on ourselves, rebuilding our biophoton field, which is rebuilding and affecting our DNA and our cells, etc. So if it has a placebo effect, it actually means it's working, not because it's fake or just what you believe. It's telling you how powerful what you think and believe is,
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
So
And, along with that, so maybe it's working because I believe it's working, which is very powerful. But I love thinking of things like homeopathics are based on frequency,
mhm.
as well as using aromatherapy that's based on frequencies. But whenever I've used these for young children and my
Mhm.
pets, they don't understand placebo effect.
That's right. They
They're
don't.
not even going, do I believe this is going to work or not? And it
Right.
does work. So
Yeah.
there to me are two proofs,
Well, and
whether,
there's a lot of other factors as to why it might hurt. I mean, I wouldn't put frankincense necessarily on for a broken bone, but
oh
that's
yeah,
all I had one time, and somebody did it and it was
yeah,
like, oh, and I would reach for birch, because birch
yeah,
is made from the bark and it resonates towards the bone.
right.
Back to, if we like
To the
flowers a lot,
signatures. Yeah,
our body's really wanting to address with the emotions and the spiritual realm and or our skin, because flowers are very delicate and our skin is
yeah, they
delicate. So
sure
that goes
are.
back to that Aleph-Tav doctrine of signature.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really about that energy of the formation of letters from creation. But anyway, without going into
Wow.
that.
I mean, yeah, we could totally go off the deep end. So this is really good. And that's what I'm saying is when you tell me about your system, I'm going, I believe it works because I've seen evidence in my own
Right,
life of homeopathics, which are based on frequencies, aromatherapy. I mean, it's both the smell and the frequency, that it's
right.
the frequency behind the smell that is causing these things to work. But let's get back to how you actually kind of got started in this, because you've been on a healing journey. You're helping people now through this amazing Aleph-Tav Body System and your own. So Dr. Uh, Alfonso
Monzo.
worked on the Aleph-Tav Body System, but you bring your unique aromatherapy into your
Right.
system. Right. So you're a creator of that as well. But let's talk about your journey. How what happened with you to get you
Well,
into the natural health field?
I was an Air Force brat, so I was raised in what they call socialized medicine.
Ah,
That was the doctor. That's what he told me. Okay.
the
when they
doctor
botched,
told the
yeah, when
doctor
they
told
botched
you.
me up, they said, "Oh, this is socialized medicine. Just deal with it."
The doctor said that.
Oh yeah, I would have
Okay.
never said that. I wouldn't have thought
Yeah.
of
Okay.
Air
Okay.
Force military doctoring as socialized, but it was okay.
Mm,
And that basically because of their oversight and doing the things that I can't tell you how many times the doctor almost killed me. Okay, at least the
mm.
first 35 years of my life. So of course that put me on what do I do? Where do I go? And part of that was I became barren.
Oh.
So I went through 10 years of not being able to conceive.
Now, had you had a
Also,
child already?
no,
No. Okay.
no, not at
Okay.
all. I
Mhm.
mean, I tried, but no.
Mhm. Okay.
But part of that was a result in scarring tubes um, because of things they did or didn't do.
Mhm.
And then also in that process, I had developed low thyroid. So I
Okay.
needed thyroid medication.
Mhm.
And as a teenager, I always had strep throat, whether I needed it or not, whether I felt it or not. I had a free gift to offer you basically. And so of course I went through that whole cycle of antibiotics and being told, "Oh, you need to wear cotton underwear." And it's like,
Ah.
I am, uh,
Yeah.
and the doctors having not a clue that they're causing me yeast infections,
Right.
which I suffered greatly through.
Uh,
Um, and so it was all that going on. And then so by the time I was 30, I well almost 30, 20, 27, 28, I had my first child, which was like wow. you know
mhm.
and I learned that having low thyroid, being on low thyroid medication, it's more difficult to conceive, and if you do, you have a higher percentage of miscarrying. Well, I
Mm.
had miscarried uh, a few months before that pregnancy. And
Wow.
then I got pregnant again. That one was successful. Then I had another one. I tried this entire time, but I can't plan like other people. So, and also for me and my husband, it was especially it was a living sacrifice. It's what does father want, right? So there
Yeah.
was an issue with birth control. Um, so I had this. So I lost one, had one. 4 years later, had another one. When she was 8 months old, I lost another one,
Oh.
and that the first one I lost was a botch from a doctor, and the last one was the doctor was mad at me because I wouldn't stop nursing my 8-month-old baby and told me
Mm.
if I miscarried, it would be my fault.
Oh no.
And she gave me a pill that almost killed me called Methergine. And man, let me tell you, that was a nightmare for me and my baby.
Oh wow.
Um, and she was a Christian doctor who knew better. Um, and she did a D&C on me without my permission,
Oh
without my
no.
knowledge.
Oh
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
Nitza.
So, and again, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And so, then I'm in my, oh gosh, I'm 31 at that point when I have my fourth child, but only two living. And I'm now having all kinds of issues. Well, go back to first full birth.
Mhm.
I'm in the hospital, and this nurse comes in. She pushes me over and sticks me in the hiney. And I'm like, what was that? And she goes, well, your records don't indicate that you had the German measles. So she gave me a German measles shot.
Wow. Right after the birth or
Right after the birth, just a few hours. And within that first 8 months, it looked like strep throat was, what's the word? Covering up what was going on. And of
Mhm.
course, then the doctor didn't wait for the culture or nothing and gave me the antibiotic, which then masked the fact that I had viral meningitis.
Oh, goodness.
And so,
And so
yeah,
you're
that
trusting them to know what to do.
right, right.
And oh, goodness.
And I got this weird blood thing where, today this would feel like it's somebody beat it,
Mhm.
but nothing happened to it. And I would look. Oh, actually, it started up here. It started here. It started here. It would be like someone hit me, and then the next day I'd wake up and it'd be black and blue.
So it started at your shoulder.
Right. And then it would move down. It would hurt there. The next day it'd be black and blue until it went all the way to the end of my fingertips.
Wow.
And all the doctors could say was, oh, you got this rare blood disease. Well, years later, I found and connected it to that shot.
Ah, so you did the research and found out that
Right.
there were links.
That
Okay.
was one of the downfalls for the internet when they put it in our hands, right?
We got
a lot of it's been scrubbed the last 5 years, but back then you could find things more.
yeah.
So anyway, well, that caused me this thing with anemia and all these other immune systems, which is when, as I mentioned once before, I ended up going to a preparedness expo in Orlando. We lived in Florida at the time. And somebody was doing live blood analysis and iridology.
Cool.
And so I sat down and, they did their thing and they said here, and they had pure herbs at the time. And I started a 3-year journey on the herbs. And that's when I started studying herbs. I'd already learned that I had to get chelated vitamins and minerals, so the body would absorb them into herbs. Like if you really want to absorb and use it and bring healing, then you get into the herbs. So that's how I started getting into the herbs. And, and of course I had my children, and then we also had a children's home. We took babies born to incarcerated mothers and other children who needed help, especially girls. And so I also schooled them Monday through Friday. So we were doing all of this.
Wow.
And, but at the same time, I'm trying to get well.
Yes.
And, cause I would just pass out and get dizzy, or things weird were happening. I was having to deal with anemia, parasites, all kinds of things. And, but I used, what they taught me or what little they gave me, cause, it was just an exhibition, right, at the conference.
Okay.
To do those herbs. And I was very fortunate that, my husband supported me in doing that. And I started taking courses with Dr. Christopher and stuff like that. And then my first experience actually with an essential oil at that time was Melaleuca. And it was tea tree oil.
Yeah.
And it was because my 7-year-old at the time had, those tent poles that bend and they're flexible and they got a piece of metal and then you attach them.
Yeah.
Well, she was playing with one and I let it go right up to the top of her mouth and it cut the top of her mouth, and this piece of skin like that was hanging down. And
it doesn't matter how many times you tell me this story, I cringe every time. Okay.
And it was actually a miracle. I was also, not only did I have our children from the children's home that we were watching, I also had another lady's children because she had a sick child, was up at the hospital. And so I had like 13 kids with me. And I go into the doctor's office and it's Friday afternoon before Labor Day weekend.
Oh.
So that was the miracle that we could even get in.
Yes, it was.
And I'm in there and all the kids are sitting in the lobby and they're really super quiet and they're very, very good. And I go back there and the doctor looks and he goes, well, the good things is it didn't perforate her nasal cavity. So he says, there's nothing we can do. Her mouth is just too tiny. We can't do surgery. He says, but I'm going to give you a prescription for antibiotics. And I looked just like, I'm thinking, I know my herbs. I know my oil. I don't know anything about oils, but I knew about tea tree. So I looked at him and said, okay, I'll take the prescription just in case, but I don't plan on using it. And so he gave me the prescription. I walked out to the lobby to get all the children. And I remember the doctor went behind the receptionist and he whispered something in her ear. Because I'm going in there. We don't have insurance, right?
Yeah.
And I don't really believe in it for the most part, but I'm really radical in that department. But anyway, I'm thinking I'm going to walk out with this surgery for $5,000 or whatever back then. And the receptionist looks up to me and she goes, that'll be $20. And I'm like,
Wow.
I will pay you $20 as fast as I can get out of here.
Cool.
And I was like, what a miracle. You know, he
Yeah.
obviously saw me and all those kids and thought I needed
She
help.
needs help.
I was like, no, I only have 3 or 5 at the time. Anyway, so yes, and the thing was, is all we did was we took a Q-tip and we dipped it into the tea tree, and
Yes.
then we just put it on the roof of her mouth. And
Yeah.
to this day, if you looked in there with a light bulb, you know, flashlight or whatever, you'll see this beautiful white, where the scar was,
Line.
light of a V, but it's perfectly flat, and it's beautiful, you know.
Wow.
So that was my first, but I still wasn't impressed with oils because I didn't know it at the time. I mean, I kind of knew I had a good sense of smell, but essential oils hadn't really, you know, it was all over Europe and places, but not the US.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all I knew was anything that was sprayed or done, or any perfume, anything's in different places that everybody else loved, I hated.
Mm-hmm.
It went right to my nose, right to my head, gave me a headache. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until years later. So flash forward, I go to one of the very first Messianic Israel conferences in Florida, and there was a lady there selling oils, and there was a small book, and in the book it talked about not meningitis, scoliosis as being a virus in the spine.
Mm.
Now that same daughter ended up with an 87-degree curve,
Ooh, wow.
needing eventually surgery and 5 ribs removed.
Oh my goodness.
So of course my thing was, what can I do for my daughter naturally? And it was a really good thing. I mean, a lot of people, they wanted to do surgery right away. Well, most kids never go past 40, 45 degrees, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
she went to 87, and that was with therapy. But the therapy that we did actually gave her more mobility so they could get more correction.
Mm.
You know, it took a longer, but if I had said yes the first time, she may have had to go in for several more surgeries.
Oh,
You know, a lot of children, especially little children with scoliosis, they grow up having surgery after surgery after
yes.
surgery,
Yes.
and it's horrific. But that got me onto the oils, and but I still was mainly herbs, and then and you know, I learned all kinds of natural stuff. I've been to a lot of Seventh Day natural training programs.
Mm-hmm.
They have missionaries and stuff that work with people, and I want to say in the '90s, late '90s, I met someone at a feast of Pentecost, Shavuot, and she was into these oils. And I had already gotten into the oils because of my daughter. And she kept telling me there were better oils, better things. And I always thought, oh no, I believed the brainwashing of the company. And I didn't care because I knew there's a big difference between a quality herb versus non-quality. It's
There
huge.
is. There is.
And so I'd also, you know, had these oils and believed everything I was told and didn't have anything to compare them to.
Mm-hmm.
So I, you know, didn't listen to her for 3 years. I was like,
She
you're
tried.
not, you're not going to convince me, right? Well, I hosted, I don't know if you know who she is. Her name was Shonda Parker, and she did a website called Naturally Healthy, and she did a lot of books on naturally healthy mama, naturally healthy living. And so she was a big herbalist, Christian herbalist, and she just passed away a couple of Sakots ago. And her and I used to write for the same homeschool magazine like 30 years ago,
Wow.
32 years ago. And about flash forward another 10 or 15, she's going to come to Northwest Montana, and her background was actually in lab work at a hospital, and she could certify, you know, continuing education units.
Mm-hmm.
And so she called me, and we got together, all the doctors and midwives and anybody who was interested in herbs. And I hosted a class for her because she was there for her husband working in Kalispell. And so this person stays with me, and she brings those other oils
Mm-hmm.
and she blindfolds me.
Yeah.
And I had a blindfold test where she presented the oils that I was using versus the oils that she had converted to. And I immediately, like, picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, smell is probably worth more. And I immediately knew, I could feel, I could sense the solvents. I just knew the energy, just like, and I don't like lavender. Okay. And when I smelled the lavender, I literally felt and could just see myself standing over a whole field of lavender.
Wow.
Whereas the lavender from the other company that I'd been using, like, I was just kind of like, ugh. Anyway.
I had a similar experience with frankincense.
Did you?
I
Yeah,
didn't see
frankincense
myself standing in, a
Right.
boswellia tree, but I never liked frankincense. I didn't like the smell of it until I got a true quality frankincense. And then it was like, oh, this is just amazing.
Right. And I would say that frankincense and more so sandalwood are the two oils that can smell the most different depending on what subspecies they are and where they come from. And you can go through bottles and bottles of frankincense and not like any of them.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the sandalwood. The sandalwood that I carry is, we call it Mysore. It's very much rare. It has some regulatory issues. That's one of the reasons. But the difference is so much that I have a particular blend called Cohen and Hadassah. And if I can't get that specific sandalwood or that specific frankincense, there is no way it's going to smell the way I want it. And therefore, I wouldn't make it. So that is something, it's not always just brand.
Yeah.
It is season, country, the distiller, etc.
Right.
And
Exactly.
like, there's a certain sandalwood I smelled. I'm like, really? Like, but that those two are, whereas a lot of the other oils will smell alike. And then even, when I was able to get oils from Israel, I have some special things I brought back from Jordan that I work with and create. But, if you smelled a honeysuckle from India, which is the common thing out there, versus the honeysuckle from Israel, oh my gosh, there's not even a comparison. The same with the lime, the same with the orange, because the energetics of what is in them and the vibrancy is so much different. And the sad thing is most people don't get to smell their oils before they buy them.
That's
right?
true. That's true.
So when you see the price of an orange from Joppa, Israel, or a lime, and you go, I'm not going to pay that. Well, if you smelled it, you would.
Yeah. And that's the thing, when you said herbs, there's a difference. I want to go back to that because I've been in the herb business. I've used herbs 30 years now.
Right.
And there are certain companies that I prefer and they're more expensive. And I realize, and I have had people stand in my store and go, well, why would I pay $30 or $40 for this bottle of golden seal, which golden seal is probably a whole lot more than that now.
High dollar now.
Right. Or, whatever herb, and I can get it from this company for $10. And so I've had that mindset too. So I am standing there buying this $10 because my budget is going, I can't afford that. Take it home. I use it and it doesn't work as well. It doesn't even come as close to doing what the other better quality herb does for me. And I'm like, so now I'm willing to pay the price. It's like, I know that quality herb is going to work and I'm willing to pay that higher price because I know I'm going to get results.
Yeah. My answer to that would be, Will, do you want to kiss a prince or do you want to kiss a frog?
That's a really good, wish I had that one way back when.
Well, I probably wouldn't have. But, nowadays we have to take it another level.
Yeah.
That I didn't used to see or have to deal with this before that 2020 year.
Yeah.
Is we do, it is really hard because you'll see that some things will cost more, not because they're better.
That's true.
But because they're doing some things and they're taking advantage of it. And the other thing is a lot of products that used to be good are no longer good. either because they bought out, sold out, or they can't get the supply since that particular year, and they have to make adjustments, and they're using synthetics. And then we won't even get into, but I will mention the nanotech world. For
Right.
instance, there's a lot of stuff out there about you should be taking nicotine, blah, 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 right? Well, I have people who send me and I can test the nicotine lozenges or whatever they're using. And I'll go, well, sure, use that brand if you want weaponized tapeworms. Go for it.
Oh my
It'll help you
goodness.
lose weight. You know what I mean?
Oh
But
yeah.
you don't know what is in things. So I unfortunately, a lot of times when I have my clients and I'm doing wellness evaluations, energetic scans, and we work on their supplements and health coaching, sometimes they'll say, well, so-and-so, and these are famous people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And are you saying, I'm going, well, I'm not saying anything. If you want to take it that way and they say differently, fine, but you need to decide what it is you want. When it comes to certain subjects, I'm telling you what I know that I've suffered through and know the difference. I'm telling you
Mm-hmm.
what I see with other practitioners. I can tell you what I see that Dr. Manzo tests. So I have that privilege to see what's going on behind the scenes. I have that privilege of seeing some of these big names come in the door.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know what he knows, and they leave and they never mention him again.
Mm.
So and a lot of that is within the supplement industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot about that. So anyway, where were we? So herbs, right? So
Yeah.
went to herbs. So what happened with that oil thing was this. I was like, whoa, okay, I'm ready to go for these oils.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, they're 30 to 40% less expensive than the oils I'm dealing with, because in the US, in other countries, aromatherapy, you went to a aromatherapist just as you would. I'm talking about a real trained aromatherapist, not
Right.
somebody who just is a distributor of sorts that's got some training. And there's
Right.
nothing against that. We need to empower each other for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't really realize that. And so it was the MLMs that really brought it to this country, even though it was already here.
It was.
And they tell you they're the only ones, but they weren't. There's people I know that have been doing it for long
Mm-hmm.
decades before they did.
That would be me. I did it
Yeah.
before. I even knew
Yeah.
what one of the MLMs.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, but here's the thing. What they call their wholesale, right? Or the good price you get is
Mm-hmm.
actually retail,
Yeah.
And so I was looking at the oils and I was going, wow, if these oils are just as good and they're going to be 30 to 40% less expensive,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try for it. And at the time, I was like 80, 90% herbs, 10, 20% oils.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I was like 80% oils, maybe 20 or 30% herbs. And I'm still very much into, let's hit it from the inside with the herbs, because the herbs are
Right.
the food that we should be using on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Oils, 99% of the time, are never made to ingest.
Right.
There are times to do it, but you got to know when, where, and how to do it properly without destroying your
And that
esophagus.
is key. That's one of the things, as
Mm-hmm.
because I've taught aromatherapy class for a well-known naturopathic school, and that was one of the things that I was trying to emphasize so much is, please work with a trained aromatherapist if you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about ingesting herbs, because and I know a lot of people who use it. And if this is you, I'm like, I'm not trying to be mean or ugly when I say this, but
Right.
there are so many potential dangers to using it internally that, yeah, when you use it, you feel better, you have great results, but there are so many things that can happen along the way. So just there's a little
Right. And
caution.
I had one client who was, I'm like, why are you buying so much clove and cinnamon? And he told me, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I told him, I said, you should not be ingesting that. And it took about 3 years. And then I didn't hear from him for a while. And then he calls me and he goes, yeah, I had to have surgery on my esophagus and my
Exactly.
stomach. And
Yeah.
so they have, and this actually just occurred to me. The herb, which, is in its natural state, however, in the whole of what Father created, is for the food, for the ingestion, right?
Yes.
But the essential oil goes through actually an alchemy. It goes through a change, the chemistry and stuff. I mean, some of the chemistry still goes with it, but there's a lot of change. And if you think about how, now we're not talking about absolutes or enfleurage and all these other things that we call essential oils that aren't really, that's a whole other study, but a true distilled essential oil, if you think about it, it's going through a process and being purified, and the molecules are coming up over, and the steam and the water is coming over, and there's going through what rises, right? The ruach. The ruach is breath, wind, smell, aroma. It's going up into the air and being transferred into something different and collected, right? And so it's actually, if you think about it, its purpose would be aroma because it's going up into the air, going through the evaporation process and back down. And then, the hydrosol, which is the byproduct water of the essential oil, for years they threw that away.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And what a waste.
Right. And which actually now we know, and I try to tell people, think of a hydrosol as the homeopathy.
Yeah.
It's the energetic imprint of the plant or the distilled oil. And it's usually, depending on what it is, like I think they say 3 to 4% of the soluble oil. And you can sometimes, a lot of that can be internally taken. There's a whole science in that, but I love to use hydrosols as carriers for the essential oils, instead of witch hazel and alcohol and stuff like that. But it's really an energetic energy capturing that, right? So anyway, yeah, it's worth the difference, and it's worth knowing the safety. On the other hand, I personally get upset when I see all the safety media pages. They drive me nuts.
Why is that?
Well, it's like, okay, I've always said if I put on a lab coat, I'd sell a lot of oils. If you think about it, if everything's about the physical chemistry, and that's part of the problem, that goes back into the whole allopathic mindset. And now, they want us to, even homeopathy, they want us to be able to have a degree, and not to say training's not good, but they want to take it out of the hands of the people.
Exactly.
That is it. It is the power. And then you
so
only know how to use it one way.
And so many herbalists, like body. Culpepper, right. I'm trying to think of, like Thompson. I mean, like all of these herbalists are like fighting to have what was then in, 1700s, 1800s, right. the power of the herbal medicine back in the hands of the people, so that we could take care of ourselves instead of allocating that to someone else and separating it. And that's a really good point, because it's like, we do want safety. We want to be wise in how we use things, but we don't want to be afraid. Just because we're saying be wise, learn how to use it properly, doesn't mean be afraid, because it's not. Because herbs and essential oils and homeopathy, I'm not saying it's never hurt anyone, but boy, so rarely, right? Compared to what we're doing with prescription medications and even over-the-counter medications, the side effects, the harm is so much less.
Right. Well, it's kind of like the homeschool thing. You can put out billions of people who can't read every year, but you get 1 or 2 homeschoolers, and now, it's homeschooling that's the problem. But
yeah. So it's like, so that's why we're saying is, don't sit here and go, well, you said safety, now I have to be afraid, because that's one of those things that also comes up is, I have to be afraid, but we don't need to be afraid. We need to be able to use it. You need to always
pray over your product anyway. Yeah. You should always. And sometimes you might spend money and the Father tell you not to use it.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about, I'm going to upset a lot of people, but if I need a chemist, why? If I took a plant and I distilled it, I'm going to have a pure therapeutic product. It's not going to be just a word logo. But, if I'm running a $1 billion company, I need to standardize my oils.
Yeah.
I'm going to push that lab report to sell my product. When in reality, and you're on the backside and you're sourcing this stuff, and you go down the trails of some of these lab reports, they're adulterated. They don't even exist. Or, you just find out like, oh my gosh. So the bottom line, especially in this day and time, is it is always the integrity of whoever you're dealing with, because we can make anything look better.
That is so true. That is so true. And we do I want to come across, I want not just come across, I want to be
Right.
honest and trustworthy. And I know that
Right.
you do too. And that's how you help people. That's one of those things where I'm sitting here going, you've been through your own issues, like we talked about, where
Right.
things happened to you that caused you to have such severe health issues. Now you didn't really even finish that story, because not only did you you do find things to help you get over barrenness and with your thyroid,
Right.
but you had
Yeah, I was
children in
healed
your
of thyroid. Yeah.
40. Yeah, you had
Yeah.
children in your 40s.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
Because I learned to juice, and I got healed. And what happened was the thyroid medication was no longer available, and I had been praying for years because I knew in the future that I didn't want to be part of the system, and I had to go every year to get a checkup to get that pill.
yeah,
And when that pill became unavailable, they wanted to put me on the synthetic version of it, and I'd seen my mother go through that, and I was like, no way. But I had a chiropractor who was really weird back in those days,
yeah.
did the muscle testing and and all that stuff. And he gave me homeopathy actually to help me wean off what was left, and then go into, and then of course I got into the herbs of supporting the thyroid, et cetera. And I was healed. And I was healed so much to the point that when I was 41 and 43, I had two babies back to back.
Hmm.
And with the 41-year-old baby, I obviously did not have enough potassium, calcium, etc. And I had a lot of
Mm,
bone spurs when he was
mm.
born, and I couldn't hold him. And so I was
Oh,
in a lot of pain. I had him across the back and the neck. And then I learned, and I want to tell everybody about this book. Don't waste your money on any juicing books as far as I'm concerned. Get Dr. Norman Walker's book, Fresh Vegetables and Fruit Juices. Read it from front to back. And I surmised from this book, which I would call the Bible of juicing, and he had cancer, was healed. I think he lived into his hundreds. And I figured out you juice fresh grapefruit juice, followed by celery juice, followed by carrot juice, and you can dissolve your inorganic calcium as your bone spurs, which
mm.
I'm going to just throw in there. If you're taking vitamin D, contact me. I'll give you videos and articles. You're actually doing damage to your body and will cause those same things. And
Yeah.
that's another argument that we have out there.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
I know it for a fact. I knew it for a fact before I ever saw it from the practitioners.
mhm.
And um, because I experienced it every single time. Even if I took it accidentally, I would get a bone spur within a week, or a kidney
Wow.
stone, right?
Yeah. Mm.
But at the time, before I ever learned the whole story, I thought it was just me and my methylation, but it's not. It's actually
Okay.
used in rat poison and stuff. But anyway,
Yeah.
so so I went through that. Now today we have what's called a full spectrum fulvic and humic minerals, which a lot of people use, but they don't realize that most on the market are not full spectrum. And what that means is it not only binds, most of them out there are only binding. So it's also stripping. And you can only afford so much stripping. But it's binding, but it's also nourishing and putting back in the minerals that your body needs. And it oxygenates the blood. And that actually gets rid of the bone spurs within a week to two for me. It's a whole lot easier than juicing.
Yeah.
Um,
I can see
so
that.
anyway, so here I was, 43 years old, and I'm 8 months pregnant, never a day nauseous, because I had gone through all this juicing regime for the months before, between his brother's
Mhm.
birth and his. and I'm 8 months pregnant, and I'm like, I feel so good. What is wrong? Like, am I really pregnant?
Wow.
Okay, so I know it's possible to feel really good. And in fact, when I went through that 2 weeks of doing the juicing regime, I actually ended up on that program for way longer just because I felt so good. And was basically almost a vegetarian for a year. I went back to meat, but I also learned that I couldn't buy store-bought chickens. The chemicals or whatever they put in them gave me eye infections, etc. But um, anyway, I got so well that I had him through that process. And the only reason I had problems with him was because the toddler, his brother, had spilt water on terrazzo tile. And when I walked around the corner, I went flying through the air and landed
Oh
on the
no.
terrazzo tile. I could have swore I broke my arm. But for 8 weeks, I fought not having him because it started my contractions.
Gotcha.
And he still was born early, but that was an accident. It had nothing to do with any of that. And I had already learned how juicing can make your baby really big and fat and plump, and you could be losing weight at the same time, because when you have nutrition, that's what it does. It heals. And I did not realize until I did that juicing that I had been in pain since I was a teenager and had arthritis and didn't
Right.
even know it. you
Right.
know
You know,
and
that's one of the
I'm the type of
things.
person that won't take a pill, but
Yeah.
I started taking Tylenol before my family would hate me because I didn't realize I was dealing with all this pain all the time, and then I was totally pain
Right.
free and having babies at 41 and 43.
You just said something about you didn't realize how much pain. And I think that is one of the things that so many of my clients have dealt with. So many of my customers at the herb shop, they have been in pain. They have felt so bad. They don't realize how bad they feel. They don't know what feeling good actually feels like. And then they start a health journey.
Right.
They start doing things. They start getting better. The symptoms start to alleviate. And then it's all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, I feel so much better, or I feel so good, or I feel great. And it's like they just don't realize. So you had that moment and you're 8 months pregnant.
Right, right. And it changes your perspective of what I can and can't do and what I can and can't face. It is huge. Just having a
It
liver
is.
cleanse can change your life for at least 6 months.
It can. It sure can. So, wow, you've been through a lot, and you're an author, as well as, doing all that you're doing. So there's a lot of content that you've written. We've mentioned a few articles that you've written, some that you need to go back and rewrite. And I just want to
Right.
do this as we're kind of getting towards the end, is
Right.
make sure that people know that you have a lot of information that they they can get to learn about some of the things we've mentioned. The work that you've been working on has led you to what you're doing now, and you've learned a lot of things that we may need to be aware of in this day and age. So like 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have the issues that we have with our health, or we were just starting to have health issues that we didn't realize would impact us so much. And they really impacted you and your health. It was really something that you had to come through, and you've learned a lot since then. Can you share some about what's going on these days and what we need to be aware of?
Yes. So first of all, let me back up. In the 70s, I was a telecommunications manager when nobody knew what that was. And I was in charge of telecommunications for the headquarters at Lowry's Lipton in Los Angeles. So I learned about satellites and, facsimiles, and which, was like woo woo. You put a picture down, it's like a copy machine, and it goes to South Africa, wherever, because they had places
Mhm.
all over. And So that kind of helped me. And then later I worked at Pacific Press, where they have these huge presses where all these little pixels where they're doing overlays and printing U.S. News and Time Magazine. And so I had this, kind of this background. So in the late 90s, when I started seeing things like, digitize your world, even though I had been through the computer stuff, I'd computerized offices for people, etc. The fact that you wanted to digitize my world was like, I remember the first time I walked into Costco and I saw that was like, digitize your world. And I was like, my mouth just popped open. I was not, was not one of those moments where I was cognitive of everybody around me. But anyway, I was
So,
like,
what did that mean to you? Because you're
oh, well,
going,
that's the first thing I said was, why does Satan want to digitize my world?
ah,
And I immediately got an answer. And then I realized I'm talking out loud. And and he told me very straight, and you'll hear me talk about this often. It's the only way the enemy can be artificially omnipotent and omnipresent.
okay. So how would that even happen? What does that
Well,
mean?
when we put around, if we know what's all around us, we're within a web of the internet, the satellites,
Yeah.
all the technology. They track and trace us everywhere. I mean, I saw the beginnings of this in the 70s,
Wow.
and not really knowing totally where it was going, of course, but realizing. And then, when it came to the herbs and the oils in the 90s and even the first 2000 to 2010, I don't know if about you, but I would notice that what used to always work before didn't
Mm-hmm.
work anymore. You had to
Mm.
really power it up. You had to change it. You had to shift it around with what would have normally worked. You could have done a detox once a year, for maintenance,
Yeah.
or then maybe a quarter. And now I deal every day in the field that I'm in and with people every day. You have to be detoxifying or at least methylating 24/7. And it's not because we can get rid of it. It's because we're just trying to keep up with it. Like we're taking water out of a sinking boat. We're just trying not to sink.
Wow. It sounds, when you say what you're saying, it really sounds kind of like I'm watching The Matrix, you
Yes, you
know?
are. You are.
uh,
You are.
it
And anything that we
sounds a
watch,
little science fiction, and
yeah.
what are you talking about here? So,
And that's just the sad part. Anything that we see or think we see and we finally start connecting, it is so far ahead of us by the time we figure that out.
yeah.
Uh, I just a few weeks ago, right before the event that happened that I won't mention, Father had brought back to my mind about the Stepford wives. And all I could remember about the Stepford wives was this void in this person's face and that the women were perfect wives. That's all I remember. I was 17 when I watched it. I went back and saw there was a 2004 remake.
Hmm.
I watched the 1975 remake, the first one, who actually was written by the same guy who wrote the book for Rosemary's Baby. For those of you who are old enough and know what that means, yeah. And then you go to 2004, see the difference between, we go from replacing these women to with robots, links it back to Disney, etc., to all the companies that we know today in 2004 and augmenting, which of course we all know about this augmentation now, we're learning, right? Anyway, so yeah, you just go do yourself. Now, don't watch it with children. I didn't realize how morally loose we were back in the 70s until, you know what I mean? Like I knew
Yeah.
we were, but you go back and you're like, whoa. Anyway, the thing is, so what happened was in 2000, I want to say 10 or 11, I started doing radio 5 days a week.
Hmm.
Well, I had a Wi-Fi up underneath my desk in front of me.
Hmm.
Within 3 months, I was crippled. And it took me years to undo that. And of course, this is before I have Dr. Monzo tools of the magnetism, the light, and the sound, right?
Yeah. Right.
Um, I'm doing it with the herbs. I'm, doing everything I know with herbs and oils and, diet,
Hmm.
etc.
Hmm.
Um, but I know what it's like to be crippled. I know what it's like to be clubfooted. I know what it's like not even be able to hold a purse. And I actually had a regression last year because somebody got a portable Wi-Fi and put it in the car with us. And within 3 days, I remember within a day, but by the third day, and then all of a sudden it clicked in my head and I realized what they were doing in the back seat. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm begging you, don't bring that into the car.
We use Wi-Fi all the time. You can't get away from
Well,
it.
you can. Well, in one sense, you can't. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have Wi Fi in my house. I direct connect
Mhm.
because I would be dead. I mean, I wouldn't be able to sleep. I could feel the pain. I can tell you where the towers are. Now, there's something that can help a lot with this. And that's what I really kind of want to get to. But I mean, and I went through 2 years, 18 months of I would feel the scorpion's venoms attack my eye, and it would be just like someone stabbing them 24/7, no stopping.
Mhm.
The eyes filling up with fluid, which is putting more pressure and totally blind. And then another 3 days of blind when it finally stops because it takes that long for your body to start restoring itself so you get your lining in your eyes. I can't think of it right now. You know what the word is. That film over your eyes, you know.
The conjunctiva or the cornea or
The lining, it was just thrashed all the time.
okay.
I want to say epithelium, but that's not right, is it? Anyway, so anyway, and I could feel it. You know, you come near me or what? If I'm going down the highway, I can feel the towers. Like I can imagine or see because I feel it. Right. Um, I just anyway. So of course, I'm learning Aleph-Tav Body System in this process. You know, even though I would never think of moving to Ohio, Father, you know, through a miraculous thing with my husband and a dream, and I had an argument because there's no way I was moving again because I had been suffering through this, and we
Mhm.
had just moved. I'm
Yeah.
like, no way I'm moving again.
Yeah.
And Father, you know, just I'm the one who has dreams and visions, not my husband, but he had one, and he was not moving. We had to move. We had to move now. Shh, we end up here. Of course, I'm going back into attacks because I was in a reprieve because we were down in a mountain valley.
Mhm.
Because you get me up to the cities or where the towers are, or around people who are transmitting a lot. And so, of course, you know, here I am again going through this. Plus, I'm taking care of my mom who's dying. And finally, I learn about what we call it's part of the root cause RCP root cause protocol, um, which is done by Marley, and there's a book called Cure Your Fatigue or something. It's about copper. And the bottom story that I'm going to try to put in a nutshell for you is we need copper. And one of the things that happened in 2020 was a lot of it vanished from our bodies. A lot of it is more, let's say, used up. Plus, it's destroyed in our food
Mhm.
because of the insecticides, pesticides, etc. So you need copper if you think about it, kind of like as a grounding.
Right.
And people like, for instance, a lot of people are really into colloidal silver. Well, when you use colloidal silver, you're displacing your copper.
Mhm.
And you need the copper, you need the magnesium, you need the retinol, um, and you need all these things working together for basic metabolic function. So it doesn't matter if your problem's thyroid or whatever it is. If you don't have this basis, just like if you don't have the Torah for the whole Bible to understand it, or the basement or the flooring of a house, how can you put on the roof? You know, they're not going to do so well.
Mhm.
But if you get this, what I call it the trio protocol, um, which is basically cod liver, because that is gives us the retinol that we need, the true A. It doesn't have to be converted. And then we have the core copper or beef liver, either one. They are grass fed beef that includes copper.
Okay.
And then we do a product called IP6, which is I want a magnesium, phosphorus, and calcium. But the really important thing here is that it has inositol.
Mhm.
Because a lot of us are walking around, we're told that we're anemic and we're not really. What happens is they're testing our blood for iron, but the iron isn't there. It's in our cell tissues.
Mhm.
And we have inorganic iron, which is the bad iron. Like, if you eat fortified cereal or reduced iron products and bread, crackers, or you pour a bowl of cereal and I want to do this. I'm going to do a video because I've done it years ago, but you get your fortified cereal, put your milk in there and get you a magnet and then just drag it across the top and you'll see that shrapnel of iron, which your body cannot absorb.
Right.
That's in your bread and your crackers, etc. It gets into your cell tissues.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have to have that to capture oxygen in your blood.
Mm-hmm.
Life is in the blood. Oxygen's number 8. It's restoration. On the table in Hebrew, it is a restoration of 8. You have to have the copper to capture the oxygen in the blood, but you have to have the iron out of the cell tissues back into the blood to carry that oxygen to your cells.
Correct.
And that all works in together with your magnesium and your retinol. And so that protocol has helped so many people. And I'd say 95% of everyone we test or scan needs it. And it is the beginning of their process. A lot of people start it before they even ever do a scan. And within a week or two, they're like, I want it for the rest of my family. But it is what stopped my eye torture. And it reduces a lot of the sensitivity. Mm-hmm. Now, I still direct wire in. I still do whatever I can. I've got, Aries Tech shields. I use shields all the time. I'm very conscientious of what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I don't want to subject myself to a Wi-Fi. Now I can go into a building now and it's at work at the clinic. I mean, I have 3 offices, but the one at the clinic and I can feel it. But if I don't take that protocol, I can really, really feel it.
Gotcha.
And the inositol is really important. It's good for so many things, the big C word that we can't talk about and diabetes and other things. But that's its job. It takes that iron and it pulls it back into the blood. So now we have good cell metabolism. So I just wanted to share that. And it really is tied into the copper snake up on the pole in the desert, but we'll save that.
Yeah. So if someone, one of the things that here, what we're trying to do on the podcast is introduce the listeners and those who watch the YouTube to people who, like I said, who've been through a healing journey and now are helping others. So you offer consultations. Is that something you said? I moved to Ohio. Does that mean I need to travel to Ohio to do a consultation with you?
No, because if you can get past and understand that your phone receives signals, we're talking here, how do you record things? Father made all these waves of energy and the enemy knows how to use them and ride them, to destroy and bring incoherence to our cells, et cetera, into our lives and our plants, et cetera. But Father can also use it that he's already created. We need it in good balance. We were never made to live in a world of all this stuff that's going on with what's going on in the air and across with the energy and stuff. So we can do it by using your DNA or an original signature. And they have machines that actually can send bad things to leaders of countries and individuals and people to cause harm. But we can also use this for good to measure a person's energetic biophoton field. Back in the old days, for us older people who watch Welcome Back, Mr. Kotter.
It's been a while.
Was it John Travolta? Arnold Horshack. Mr. Kotter, I can see your aura, right?
Yeah.
Well, your aura is a word that triggers a lot of people, but hey, in Hebrew, it's or.
Light.
It's light.
Yeah.
And we have now, because of digitized technology, we can measure and see the light energy around us. And that is our biophoton field. So we can test for what is in balance and out of balance that's within our biophoton field. And a lot of times what is in our biophoton field isn't really even from us. Like, for instance, on a spiritual, emotional level, if I'm picking up on something that would be considered bad, like say lust or, some kind of grief, it could actually just have been attached to my spiritual realm of my biophoton field, but it's registering, but it's not mine. It's not emanating from me.
It's coming from
You know,
somewhere else.
right. The most fascinating one, I've seen so many fascinating ones and experienced them also, but the one I heard just last week, which wasn't my client, but there was someone who had a female client and they were picking up prostate cancer imbalances, right?
Wow.
And they're like,
So that would make, okay, so first, I know what would happen. Would you say the machine's wrong, the
right,
technology's
right,
wrong, what you're doing is wrong, it's
right,
got to be wrong.
right.
But it wasn't
Which,
wrong.
yeah, but first of all, there's a lot about learning how to interpret. It's not bad just because it's bad. But in this woman's case, it turns out she had been sitting by her brother's bedside who was dying of prostate cancer.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow,
Yeah.
wow. But basically, we go through and do a comprehensive scan that, gives us the top 4 things that are causing the body imbalance. Now, my scans are different in the sense that mine are all tied to Dr. Monzo's training program for Quest 4 practitioners doing ATB. So it's, a lot of people get Quest scans, but Quest scans have so many different ways of testing. It depends on the practitioner and what they specialize in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we specialize in ATB, doing it the ATB way with Dr. Monzo.
Okay, so
Now, there are some ATB things shared, but I'm actually in that program.
I'm gonna pause and just clarify. So Quest 4 is a system that can
It's
be
a
used.
bioenergetic
Yeah,
machine.
bioenergetic
Right.
system.
Right.
Dr. Monzo has taken that and is using that basic system, which is really
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. It's not all that basic. I'm just saying layer wise, your foundation. And he's added the
Right.
Aleph-Tav
Right.
body system to it. And then you've taken and layered on top of that
Right.
as well the aromatherapy, and you call that the Q aroma. What do you call
The
that?
quantum or QR, quantum aroma response therapy. So you would say MRT for muscle response therapy or
Right.
testing. It
Right.
would be quantum because quantumly we're measuring what your body resonates with the essential oils. And I do have lipids in there also.
Okay. So you've got like 3 layers of, you got your Quest, you got the Aleph-Tav body system, and now you're adding the
Right.
Quest aroma. Right.
I
Okay.
could have done it. I could have done that just on its own, but I keyed it all to ATB because when I got here and I started going, I'll bet you this will, if I key it to the Aleph-Tav body system and the body points and the cycles, I'll bet you your body's resonating and telling me what's going on. And sure enough, it does. So let me give you one example.
Okay.
So I did a scan on a QR and they only, some people resonate more towards aroma therapy versus cymatics or tuning forks, right? Their body needs more of that vibrational
Gotcha.
sound energy,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And and it may differ, whatever, depending on your health, where you're at, et cetera. But I scanned this person, and there were 3 areas that popped out. One was spiritual. They tied into a lot of spiritual Torah oils, and then they tied into an area of the body that was over here, and on the rib area, which I won't go into the body points because that'll just confuse people probably. But if you're ATB, you know what we're talking about. Well, and then I knew, and I could tell with a bunch of other things, but what I do is I go through and say, where does the body pick the most cycles and the most body points? Well, that is where I would apply that essential oil.
Topically.
Yeah,
Okay.
topically. Now you can always breathe it in. There's other ways to
Mm-hmm.
use that oil because it goes into your blood system, of course, just by breathing. But in particular, we can bring energy and balance to those areas by looking at this scan. Well, it turns out this person has this collarbone out of whack, and it also did things to the spine where it made the right ribs fall out of place.
Oh, okay.
So did it tell me that this was out of place and this was out of place? No, but it told me that those are the areas that are energetically congested and or need help,
Right.
and it can be addressed with those essential oils because it's going to resonate with that.
That's pretty fascinating. And I love what you said. I want to go back to making sure, because everything in the natural health world, the holistic practice of health is looking at the whole person, spirit, soul, body, not just the body, not just one part, not just the emotions either. It's
Right.
tied in. And my husband and I have the AO scan, and so sometimes we'll run the frequency, listen to the sound. And they also have the colored glasses, and we have the colored glasses. And I noticed that when I wore the colored glasses that would say that matched the frequency, I would get a headache. I would get a headache every time. And I stopped using, I can listen to the frequency, but if I wear those glasses, man, or maybe I was wearing them too long, I have an issue with that. And so I learned to, go, well, that's not for me. Whereas my husband, when he wears the colored glasses that match the frequency from what we're scanning, he has no problem. It makes him feel better. But I just thought how it's important that we say everybody is unique. And it's not like, even though you said the copper, the IP6, I think, and a few other things, those are foundational. And while almost everyone would probably do well, and I don't want to say everyone, because there's going to be that one person that you're going to, that does not work
Right.
for you. But it's important to get the foundations, but it's also very important to get that individualized look at what you are dealing with and what you resonate with and what will work for you. And it's important to work with someone as a guide. And that's what I think of when I think of all these guests, you and others that I'm having on who are helping, they're doing consultations. And it's like, you're the guide saying, this is what we're discovering will help you feel better, do better, look better, and look better. Skin, hair. If your skin and hair are looking better, that means the inside is doing better, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I love what you shared, and I think that's important. And one of the reasons I ask, do I have to travel to Ohio, is the answer is basically no. I can book a consultation with
Right.
you and get the help that I need from you
Right.
virtually if I need to. And
Right. And actually, when you start, a lot of us actually prefer, I mean, I do see people in person occasionally, but there's just so much, and so many people are sick and or have emergencies, and it's just easier to go through and then schedule a consultation online. And I can look at things faster, because then the person's just sitting there holding the electrode when we can do
yeah.
it the other way.
So we're going to have your
So,
link.
and I could
Yeah,
get a
we'll
lot more
have your
information
link, your
from them.
information, all of that for how,
Yeah.
I need to see you and I need to get in touch with you. Well, we'll have that in the show notes so you can get that. So
Right.
that's really cool. Now, you also were telling me about something that you have coming up, I believe, in Montana.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Tell us all
Yes,
about
yes,
that.
yes, yes,
What's
yes.
going on?
So May 8th, 9th, and 10th, which is
Uh-huh.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I will be doing a retreat in Montana. And of course, that was my old stomping ground. And but the thing is this: so we're going to do the retreat, and so I'm going to basically, I'll actually tell you what the topics are. But the really exciting thing about this, besides it's in beautiful Northwest Montana, just outside of Kalispell, next to Glacier
Cool.
National Park, is when I finish Sunday, Dr. Monza will be coming in, and people will be able to attend his training level 1
And
class.
he teaches his Aleph-Tav Body System class. Okay.
Yes, and so you don't have to come to Ohio. We're going to take it to
Ah,
Montana. And this also helps a lot of people in the West and Northwest, the Southwest, that want to come. And some people from here actually want to go up there just because
yeah.
it's Montana. So we're going to do these, his normal class. Actually, he's going to add an extra little advanced class at the end of his. Um, and I'm going to basically talk about sound,
Mm-hmm.
Genesis 1, magnetism, electromagnetism, sound, light, and the restoring the order and balance from chaos to life. I'm going to talk about biblical quantum aroma response, aromatherapy. I'm actually going to try to teach people how to do an analysis themselves. I mean, we can run the scan, but I'm teach them how to look at the scan, because they don't know what
Yeah.
to do with it, right? They're going to look at, oh, those are the oils. Well, yeah, okay, you could go off and blend yourself some oils like that, right? We can also blend for you, but we give you a whole analysis with a mini wellness overview. I want to show you how to
Mm.
do that
Mm-hmm.
within the different things
Mm-hmm.
that you can do. And then when I talk about Elohim, Aleph-Tav, Yeshua, where heaven and earth
Mm-hmm.
cross,
Oh
there's a
yeah.
whole thing about how you can see that physically within the body. And I want to talk about, it's all about that tree,
Okay.
which will relate more to the copper, bronze. Well, they think it's bronze, but it's copper snake
Mm-hmm.
in the desert, and how that actually relates to energetics and imprints, and how it works with the snakes, and why the snakes, um, the snakes resonated to copper mines, and the Israelites had actually disobeyed and went a route they weren't supposed to, which happened to be where the copper mines were, which is where the
Mm.
snakes were. So they would have never ran into the snakes
Oh
if they
wow.
had obeyed. Um, so, trying to put all the different things, the energetics and the things that I've learned over the years, I'm like, oh
That
my
sounds fascinating.
gosh.
Now that is
Yes.
the
Now
weekend.
I
So
get,
the first weekend in May, I'm having a weekend away, our Brilliant Health Weekend Away event in LJ, Georgia, and I'm sitting
oh,
here going, "How can
oh,
I?"
oh,
I know
LJ,
we
LJ.
we
I would
keep
love to
hitting and
go there.
missing, and I'm
That's a
going, "Now,
beautiful
can I
area.
turn around and go immediately the next week?" Because boy, and I'm going, "Okay, now." Do you have to
Yeah.
know how? Do you have to have a Quest 4 machine, Quest 4 to come to your class or to go to Dr. Monzo's?
No, no, I mean, I do have practitioners that may come that have one, but no, you don't have to have anything but
Okay,
yourself basically to come to the class. Now, and even Dr. Monzo's class, you're learning how to do the level 1 Aleph-Tav Body
right.
System, of learning how to lay on of hands and use the energy that Father's given us to move the energy to clear people, which will affect them. And we just finished a class this week. Again, even the practicum, you have people who have an emotional, spiritual, or physical breakthroughs
Yeah,
in their health just by coming to the class.
fascinating.
So, yeah, no, you don't need anything. You just need to show up with Dr. Monzo, of course. Now, that's really important. If you want me to do an analysis for you on the Q, everybody's going to get the scan in the core in my
Mhm.
workshop, but if you actually want to take it the next step and have the health analysis, or if you want to take it to the next step and have me create your blend, those things you have to register and get that stuff to me ahead of time so we can have it. Otherwise, we're going to play on the back end. With Dr. Monzo, his class actually, a lot of it now is online. So as soon as you sign up, you need to go through the video training portions of the
Right.
class ahead of time. So you'd want to be at least a month or two
Okay.
ahead. And then we also have some Zoom, like we have at least 3
Uh-huh.
Zoom classes as you're going along. And then when you show up to class, you have so much more time to do the actual
That makes
hands-on
sense.
learning
That
and
makes
using the
sense.
tools.
So
Yeah.
I will be sure. So
Instead of
we're
cramming
going to
it
have a
all
lot
in.
of links for. We're going to have the
Yeah.
information on how to get in touch with you. Just because while the weekend and then the following week sounds fascinating, some people they're going to want to continue working with you because
Right.
in my opinion,
Yeah.
my experience is we don't go to someone in the natural wellness field and go, okay, I've come in once or twice and now I don't need any more help. This is a
Right.
journey. This is something that even if you do start to feel better, get better, do better, right? Things still continue to happen.
Right.
We're still exposed to things. We still need ongoing help. So that's my opinion. So, there's
Right.
just a lot. So
Yeah.
we're going to have, how to get in touch with you, how to be a part of the weekend in Montana, how to get products from you, all that kind of information. I'll have that in the show notes.
Right.
Before we go, Nitza, um, is if there was one thing, if you just think about, one thing that you would share that's really important for people to know about their health or whatever, what is it that you would want to share with others that can really be of value?
I would go back to the trio just because I suffered so much and it made such a big difference in my life. It's just understanding that we have to have the copper, we have to get the iron back to where it belongs. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can learn and look, but number one above all things is you need to know who Elohim Aleph-Tav is, because he will guide you, speak to you, lead you where you need to go. And a lot of things that I have had victories with in my own health or the health of my family has been directed by the Holy Spirit. And if I had had the head knowledge, I would have botched it up, because I would have walked out of fear. Like, oh my gosh, that's what's really wrong. And I've seen so many times where he has healed and delivered. I don't always have to work and strive at working at everything, but sometimes he just instantly heals.
He sure does. And so that's really cool. Relationship and knowing who he is, a relationship with him and knowing who he is important. And when we say Elohim, we translate that into English as God. Aleph-Tav are the Hebrew letters, the first letter and last letter of the alphabet. In Greek, we would say Alpha and Omega, and that's who Jesus or Yeshua is. And so we're not really,
God, Lord.
we're not really saying,
Yahweh, Yahuwah.
We're not trying to say weird things
Yahushua.
and confuse you. We're just going back to the root, because the root of the language, that means it's so much. It means so much. And we don't even have time to go there. So, well, thank you so much, Nitza, for joining me. I love all that we talked about and that you shared. And I'm sitting here going, I really do want to come to, sometime. And I've never been to Montana. So going to Montana would be cool. But I'm really glad you were able
Maybe
to
we
join
can do
me.
one over here in Ohio or Pennsylvania.
Who knows?
We'll see.
One day. So, but thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.